The fluorescent lights blurred into white streaks above her. Nadine felt her knees buckle first. Then her vision tunneled. Then gravity took over, and she was falling in front of 23 executives, 14 department heads, and the most dangerous man on the eastern seaboard. 3 days. That's how long she'd been hiding 2 fractured ribs, internal bruising that turned her torso into a canvas of purple and black, and pain so severe that breathing felt like swallowing glass. 3 days of pressing foundation into bruises. 3 days of oversized blazers to hide the damage. 3 days of crushing painkillers between her teeth because she couldn't afford to look weak. Couldn't afford to lose this job. Couldn't afford to let them see her break. But the body doesn't negotiate with bills. It doesn't care about deadlines or dignity or the $47.23 in her bank account. And on the 3rd day, in the middle of the most critical quarterly review of the year, Nadine Usher's body made a decision her mind refused to make. It gave up. She should have hit the conference room floor. Italian marble. Expensive. Unforgiving. Instead, she fell into hands. Massive hands. Tattooed at the wrists. Belonging to a man who hadn't touched another human being gently in longer than he could remember. Lee Min-woo caught her like she weighed nothing. Like he'd been waiting for her to fall. And in a building where his word was law, where his name was whispered like a curse, where grown men avoided his gaze, this CEO, this billionaire, this dragon of Manhattan, looked down at the unconscious woman in his arms and made a decision that would burn his empire to the ground if that's what it took. Some people call it protection. Others call it obsession. Nadine would learn to call it something else entirely. Now, before I tell you how a woman with a master's degree ended up cleaning toilets for the Korean Mafia, and how that decision saved her life, I need you to do something real quick. Look at the subscribe button. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed, you're basically reading someone else's book over their shoulder. Just hit it. It takes half a second, it costs nothing, and honestly, you're going to want to be here for what happens next. Smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I see every single comment. Every country, every city. Drop your flag, let me know you're here. Alright. Let's go back 6 months. Let's talk about how Nadine Usher ended up in that conference room in the first place. Nadine Usher stared at her phone screen at 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in January. $47.23. That's what stood between her and nothing. She refreshed the banking app. The number didn't change. Outside her Washington Heights apartment window, the sky was still dark. The radiator in the corner hissed and clanked, struggling against the winter cold. From the apartment next door, she could hear her neighbor's alarm through the paper-thin walls. Nadine set her phone down next to the Howard University diploma hanging above her tiny kitchen table. Master's in Economics. 3.9 GPA. Distinguished thesis on market inequalities in urban centers. Worth exactly nothing in this job market. She opened the cupboard. 1 package of ramen left. 4th morning in a row. She put the kettle on and opened her laptop. The student loan notification glowed on the screen. $127,000 balance. Payment due, February 1st. 19 days away. Another payment she wouldn't make. While the water heated, she pulled her only interview outfit from the closet. Black blazer from Goodwill. Black slacks with a small tear near the hem she'd stitched by hand. A white blouse she'd ironed 3 times, trying to hide wrinkles that had become part of the fabric. It's just cleaning, she whispered to herself, smoothing the blazer. It's just cleaning. But it wasn't just cleaning. Not at $23 an hour with benefits. Not at Hanjin Tower. Everyone in New York knew about Hanjin. Shipping company on paper. Something else in reality. The kind of business where delivery trucks moved at night and security guards carried weapons that weren't in any catalog. Nadine had done her research. 3 hours online the night before, reading old news articles, public records, court filings. Lee Min-woo, CEO. Investigated twice by federal agencies. Nothing stuck. His father built the company in the 80s. His grandfather had been something important in Seoul. The kettle whistled. She made her ramen, ate it standing up, checking the time. 6:23 a.m. Interview at 8 o'clock. Nadine put on her clothes, applied minimal makeup, and twisted her hair into a neat bun. Professional. Forgettable. Exactly what she wanted to be. She picked up her keys with the small pepper spray attached and her phone with its spiderweb of cracks across the screen. In the bathroom mirror, she looked at herself one last time. Survival doesn't care about your GPA, she told her reflection. The subway at 7:15 was packed with people hiding inside winter coats. Nadine stood holding a pole, watching faces, calculating odds. It was the economist in her. She couldn't help it. Everything was data. The woman across from her, designer bag, cheap shoes, prioritizing appearance over comfort. The man beside her, expensive watch, wrinkled suit, recent divorce based on the pale band of skin where a ring used to be. She got off at 42nd Street and walked 3 blocks to Hanjin Tower. 52 floors of glass and steel rising up like a monument to money and power. The morning sun hit it and turned the windows into mirrors reflecting the city back at itself. As Nadine approached the entrance, she noticed the security guard. Standard uniform, non-standard weapon. The slight bulge under his jacket wasn't a regular security handgun. It was smaller, flatter. The kind of thing people carried when they didn't want to be noticed carrying anything. The lobby was too clean. Too quiet. Wrong energy. Banks had marble floors and high ceilings, but they also had noise. Conversation. Life. This place felt like a museum dedicated to wealth. Look, don't touch, don't speak. The receptionist directed her to the 32nd floor. HR. In the elevator, Nadine stood perfectly still, aware of the camera in the corner watching her. Mrs. Park was waiting in a small conference room. Korean American, mid-50s, with practical glasses and a navy suit that said competent, not fashionable. She had the kind of face that gave nothing away. Nadine Usher, she asked, not really a question. Yes, ma'am. Sit. The interview started normally enough. Experience? Office cleaning during undergraduate. Retail since graduation. Availability? Any hours. Completely flexible. Transportation? Subway. I live in Washington Heights. Why this position? Nadine had prepared for this. Don't mention the economics degree. Don't look overqualified. The pay is good. The benefits are better. I'm reliable, detail-oriented, and I understand discretion. Mrs. Park made a note. Her pen scratched against the paper, the only sound in the room. This position requires a confidentiality agreement, she said, looking up. Everything you see or hear in this building stays in this building. Is that going to be a problem? Nadine's heart rate increased slightly. Her face stayed neutral. No, ma'am. Good. Mrs. Park closed the folder. You'll work the day shift, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. You'll be assigned to floors 40 through 52. Those are executive floors. Different rules apply. What kind of rules? Mrs. Park's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened. You don't speak to executives unless spoken to. You don't enter occupied offices. You don't discuss anything you see with anyone, including other staff members. You report any unusual activity to security, not to gossip about it. Nadine nodded. Understood. One more thing. Mrs. Park leaned forward slightly. Mr. Lee, our CEO, occasionally works unusual hours. If you encounter him, you address him as Mr. Lee or Sir. You don't make eye contact unless he initiates conversation. You don't ask questions. Don't make eye contact. Nadine had grown up in Baltimore. She'd walked past drug corners on her way to school. She knew what "don't make eye contact" meant. It meant the person at the top wasn't someone you wanted to notice you. Understood, she said again. The pay is $23.15 per hour. Medical, dental, 401k match after 90 days. Uniforms provided. Background check required. Start date would be this Monday. The salary was nearly double what Nadine had made at her last job. It would cover rent, student loans, maybe even food that didn't come in a package. I'll take it, Nadine said. Mrs. Park's expression didn't change. She pushed a stack of papers across the table. Sign these. All of them. Last page is the confidentiality agreement. It's legally binding. Nadine signed without reading. She knew what she was agreeing to. Silence. Invisibility. Looking the other way. $23.15 an hour bought a lot of looking the other way. Monday morning, 5:30 a.m. Nadine stood in the employee entrance of Hanjin Tower, wearing the uniform they provided. Dark gray slacks and button-up shirt with Hanjin Logistics Group embroidered on the chest. Practical shoes. Hair pulled back. An older Korean woman with a name tag that read Sunhee, lead custodian, handed her a badge on a lanyard. Facilities maintenance, floors 40 to 52, it read. Nadine's photo looked tired. Probably because she was. You new girl? Sunhee asked. Yes, ma'am. You follow me. I show you. The service elevator smelled like cleaning supplies and cigarettes. It moved faster than Nadine expected, making her stomach drop. Sunhee didn't speak until they reached the 40th floor. Executive floor's different, she said as they exited. Special rules. Mrs. Park explained, Nadine said. Sunhee shook her head. Mrs. Park explained company rules. I explain real rules. She led Nadine down a quiet hallway. It was 5:45 a.m. The building was still mostly empty. Rule 1. You see wrong thing, you clean it up. No questions. What's a wrong thing? Blood. Broken glass. Things not supposed to be there. Nadine's stomach tightened. Blood? Rule 2. Security cameras for a regular employee, not for executive floors. No cameras in executive elevator. No cameras in Mr. Lee's office. Remember that. No cameras. Meaning no record of what happened there. Rule 3. Mr. Lee very particular. His office cleaned before 7 a.m. or after 10 p.m. Never when he there. And if he is there, you turn around. You come back later. You never disturb. Son, he handed Nadine a cart loaded with cleaning supplies. You start here. 40th floor restrooms, executive offices, conference rooms. Work your way up. Top floor, Mr. Lee's office, you save for last. Always. Understood. Son, his expression softened slightly. You smart girl. I can tell. Be invisible here. Is safer. She left Nadine alone with her cart and her thoughts. Be invisible. Don't ask questions. Clean up the blood. Nadine pushed the cart toward the first office. The wheels squeaked slightly against the marble floor, the sound echoing in the empty hallway. She was walking into the dragon's den. Eyes down. Voice quiet. Invisible. She just hoped the dragon wouldn't notice her. On her first day, Nadine learned 3 things about Hanjin Tower. 1. The elevators to the executive floors had no cameras. 2. The security guards answered to someone other than the security manager. 3. There was a man on the 52nd floor that everyone whispered about but no one would name. She also learned a 4th thing, though it would take her 5 months to understand it. Someone on those executive floors had already noticed her. And in a building where being noticed usually meant trouble, Nadine Usher had just become the most interesting person in the tower. Nadine figured it out on day 4. The trick wasn't to be unseen. It was to be seen, forgotten, and dismissed in the same breath. True invisibility wasn't about hiding. It was about being so predictable, so expected, so perfectly unremarkable that people's eyes slid right past you. Like the water cooler or the potted fern in the corner, present but unworthy of attention. By week 2, she had mapped the entire rhythm of Hanjin Tower in her mind. 5:30 a.m., security shift change. The night guards who carried themselves like soldiers handed off to the day guards who smiled more but watched just as carefully. 6:15 a.m., maintenance crew arrived. Mostly middle-aged men from Queens who spoke in short sentences and never looked up past the 40th floor. 7 a.m., first wave of assistants. Young, nervous, carrying coffee that wasn't for them. 7:30 a.m., middle management. Badge swiping, newspaper folding, coffee drinking. Conversations about sports and children's schools. False laughs at bad jokes. 8:15 a.m., junior executives. Designer shoes. Phones already to ears. 8:45 a.m., senior executives. No phones. No hurry. The building adjusted to them, not the other way around. 9:30 a.m., the Koreans who weren't on any org chart. Men with expensive watches who spoke quietly in hallways and made senior executives straighten their spines. And through it all, Nadine moved like water. Present, essential, unnoticed. You learn fast, son, he told her at the end of week 3. They were in the supply closet on the 43rd floor. Son, he was counting inventory. Nadine was reorganizing the closet, her 3rd improvement to the cleaning system that week. I'm just doing my job, Nadine replied, shifting bottles of industrial cleaner into more logical groupings. Son, he snorted. Job is clean toilet. Not make spreadsheet for supply closet. Nadine froze. The paper in her hand, the inventory tracking system she developed, suddenly felt like evidence of something she shouldn't have done. Is it a problem? She asked. Son, he studied her for a long moment. No problem. Just interesting. You think like manager, not cleaner. I can stop. No. System is better. More efficient. Son, he closed her inventory clipboard. Just remember. Smart is good. Too smart is noticeable. Nadine nodded, understanding completely. Noticeable was dangerous. Hanjin Tower had 3 hierarchies. The first was the official one. The org chart printed in the company directory that Nadine memorized in her first week. CEO Lee Min-woo at the top. C-suite executives beneath. Department heads. Senior management. Middle management. Regular employees. The second was the practical one. Who actually wielded power? Which executives could make things happen with a phone call? Which managers could approve expenses without additional signatures? Which assistants controlled access to which executives? The third hierarchy was the invisible one. And it took Nadine 2 months to start mapping it. The Korean men in suits who never wore name tags but made security guards stand straighter. The conversations that switched to Korean when she entered a room. The unmarked office on the 47th floor where people entered looking confident and left looking shaken. And above it all, Lee Min-woo. The man she'd never seen but whose name caused every conversation to drop half an octave. Mr. Lee is very pleased with the quarterly results. Mr. Lee feels we should reconsider the Dubai expansion. Mr. Lee will be in the building tomorrow. That last one always sent a ripple through the entire tower. Like the first tremor before an earthquake. Nadine had cleaned his office 12 times. Always before 7 a.m., as Sun he instructed. His desk was impeccably organized. 3 monitors. A single photograph in a silver frame showing a traditional Korean family, parents in formal clothing, 2 young boys standing stiffly in front. A collection of economics books that made her pause the first time she saw them. Several were texts she'd used at Howard. Once, she found a Wall Street Journal open on his desk. Red pen marks highlighted an article about market inefficiencies in Asian shipping routes. The same topic as her master's thesis. She did not look closely. She did not touch anything. She cleaned and left. Invisible. Forgettable. Safe. The break room on floor 42 had the best coffee machine in the building. Executives from other floors found excuses to use it. Which is why Nadine always cleaned it at 10:15 a.m., when most executives were in their first meetings of the day. Until the Tuesday when her schedule got shifted. She was wiping down counters at 11:30 instead, cursing the fire alarm test that had thrown off her routine, when the door opened. She didn't look up. Rule 1 of invisibility: acknowledge presence with body language, a slight shift, a small step aside, but never with eye contact. She moved her cart 3 inches to the left, clearing a path to the coffee machine. You're new. Not a question. A statement. Nadine kept wiping, responding without pausing. Started 2 months ago, sir. 2 months and I'm just noticing you. That seems like my loss. Something in his tone made her glance up despite herself. David Morrison. Logistics manager. Floor 42. She recognized him from her mental map of the organization. Mid-40s. White. Medium height with a runner's build. The kind of conventionally handsome that came from expensive haircuts and regular gym memberships. He was blocking the path to the door. Just doing my job, sir, she said, keeping her voice neutral, eyes already back on the counter she was wiping. Your job includes the entire floor, he asked, moving closer to the coffee machine. Not using it. Just moving. Floors 40 through 52, sir. That's a lot of territory to cover. He leaned against the counter she'd just cleaned. You must be very thorough. The way he said thorough made her skin tighten. I should finish up, Nadine said, gathering her supplies. Other areas to clean. What's your name? He asked, still not moving from his position between her and the door. Nadine Usher. She never lied when asked directly. Lying created inconsistency. Inconsistency created attention. Nadine. He repeated it like he was tasting it. I'm David Morrison. Logistics Management. She nodded without looking at him, wheeling her cart toward the door. He stepped aside at the last possible moment, his arm brushing against hers as she passed. Not an accident. The break room was 15 feet wide. See you around, Nadine. She didn't respond. The door swung shut behind her. In the empty hallway, she took one deep breath. Just one. Then she was moving again, invisible again, safe again. Except she wasn't. That night, in her apartment, Nadine opened her laptop. The internet connection was slow, the cheapest plan Spectrum offered, but it worked. David Morrison. LinkedIn profile. Logistics manager at Hanjin Logistics Group, 8 years. Before that, Daewoo Shipping, 3 years. Dartmouth undergrad. No graduate degree. She clicked through to his connections. Thomas Morrison. Board of Directors at Hanjin Logistics Group. Same last name. Profile picture showed the family resemblance. Uncle, most likely. Nadine closed the laptop. The math was simple. David Morrison had connections. Connections meant protection. Protection meant power. Power meant danger. She filed this information away with everything else she'd learned about Hanjin. Just another data point in an increasingly complex equation. An equation where she was the smallest variable. By month 3, Nadine had collected 2,160 data points about Hanjin Tower. That's what her mind called them, anyway. Data points. Observations. Patterns. She knew that Anderson from accounting took 3 smoke breaks every day, exactly 37 minutes apart. She knew that the security rotation changed every Tuesday at 4 p.m. instead of the usual 2 p.m. She knew that deliveries to the loading dock happened at 1 a.m. on Wednesdays and Fridays, and the security cameras in that area switched off for exactly 43 minutes during those deliveries. She knew that certain conference rooms were booked under the name strategic planning, but were never actually used. The lights stayed off, the doors remained locked. She knew that the janitorial closet on the 48th floor was accessed by men who didn't carry cleaning supplies. Economists dealt in patterns. And Nadine saw patterns everywhere. The Shanghai route is bleeding money, said a voice from inside conference room C. Nadine paused outside, her cart positioned to block the partially open door from closing completely. Eavesdropping wasn't her intention, but information was survival. We've adjusted the manifests 3 times, another voice replied. Stressed. Male. American accent. We're still showing a 14% loss compared to last quarter. Mr. Lee wants solutions, not problems. A third voice. Korean accent. Authority. Nadine wiped the same spot on the window beside the door, making herself busy, making herself part of the architecture. The issue is container utilization, the first voice said. We're shipping at 82% capacity on the return routes. Nadine's mind instantly did the math. Shipping containers. Capacity utilization. Profit margins. The problem wasn't the route. It was the balance. They were shipping full containers to Shanghai and returning with partial loads because the import-export ratio between the destinations was uneven. The solution was obvious: secondary pickups at Busan or Yokohama on the return route. Increase utilization to at least 90%. She almost spoke. Almost knocked. Almost said, "Excuse me, but..." Instead, she moved her cart 6 inches to the right and continued cleaning the window that was already clean. The hardest part wasn't the physical work. It wasn't the early mornings or the chemical smell of industrial cleaner that clung to her clothes. The hardest part was pretending she didn't understand everything happening around her. Pretending the master's degree on her wall at home didn't exist. Pretending the brain that had graduated top of her class was only good for remembering which bathroom needed more paper towels. That night, Nadine sat at her kitchen table with a notebook. Not a diary. She wasn't the diary type. This was a data collection tool. On the left side, observations. In the middle, patterns. On the right, conclusions. She wrote in a personal shorthand, never using company names, never recording anything that would violate her confidentiality agreement. Just patterns. Behaviors. Systems. Service elevator maintenance schedule doesn't match usage patterns. Floor 47, power consumption inconsistent with occupancy. Executive visitor badges issued without logging. She wasn't gathering evidence. She was organizing her thoughts. Finding the shape of things by mapping their edges. What she didn't know was that this notebook, this simple habit of analysis, would later save her life. The 5th time David Morrison appeared in her path, Nadine started counting. The 5th time was a Tuesday, 9:47 a.m., hallway outside the men's restroom on floor 44. She was replacing paper towels. "Morning, Nadine," he said, like they were colleagues. Like they'd had multiple conversations instead of 4 brief, one-sided exchanges. "Good morning, sir." "David," he corrected. "Sir makes me feel old." She didn't respond, didn't correct herself, kept restocking paper towels. He leaned against the doorway. "You know, you should smile more. You've got a beautiful face." She nodded once, still not looking at him, and moved to exit the restroom. He didn't step aside immediately. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. Then he moved, but not enough. She had to turn sideways to slip past without touching him. 5. Done. She wheeled her cart away, feeling his eyes on her back. The 6th time was a Thursday, 10:15 a.m., break room on 42. She'd returned to her regular schedule, but so had he. "That uniform really doesn't do you justice," he said as she wiped down tables. She nodded once. Non-committal. Not encouraging. Not rude enough to report. "Do you have a boyfriend? Husband?" She kept wiping, kept moving. "I need to finish here, sir." "David," he corrected again. "And you didn't answer my question." She looked at him directly for the first time. Brief. Professional. "I keep my personal life separate from work, sir." His smile tightened at the corners. Admirable. Old-fashioned. "I like that." She finished cleaning and left. 6. Done. The 7th time was a Monday, 8:22 a.m., elevator bank on 46. She was waiting for the service elevator. He stepped up beside her. "We keep running into each other," he said. The service elevator arrived. She stepped in, hoping he'd continue to his destination. He followed her in. She pressed SL for service level. He didn't press any button. "Which floor, sir?" she asked, staring at the control panel. "Just enjoying the ride," he said. The elevator was 6 feet wide. He stood less than 2 feet from her. She clutched the handle of her cart, acutely aware of the closed space, the lack of cameras. "You're very focused," he said. "I've noticed that about you. Always working. Always thinking." The elevator seemed to move slower than usual. "You're not really the cleaning type, are you?" he asked, his voice lower. "You seem educated." The elevator reached the service level. The doors opened. "This is my floor," she said, pushing her cart forward. His hand touched her lower back as she passed. Just for a moment. Just enough. "Have a good day, Nadine." The doors closed. She exhaled. 7. Done. That night, Nadine opened a new page in her notebook. At the top, she wrote, "David Morrison, incidents." She recorded each interaction. Date. Time. Location. What was said. Whether anyone else was present. Whether physical contact occurred. She didn't know if it would ever matter. But economists deal in data. And data is power. By month 3, Nadine had perfected the art of invisibility. She knew which hallways to avoid. Which elevators were safest. Which times David Morrison was most likely to accidentally appear. She had a system. A routine. A strategy. What she didn't know was that her strategy was about to fail. Because David Morrison had just decided that invisible wasn't good enough anymore. And somewhere on the 52nd floor, someone else had been watching her survival tactics with growing interest. Someone who recognized strategy when he saw it. Nadine began to count the incidents on her fingers. Then in her notebook. Then in bruises. It was easier, somehow, to think of them as data points. Evidence. Not things happening to her body, her space, her sense of safety, just information to be collected, organized, and analyzed. By month 4, she had developed a system. On a Tuesday at 7:13 a.m. The elevator doors were closing on the lobby level when a hand shot between them. The sensors triggered, doors reopening. David Morrison stepped inside, straightening his tie. "Going up?" he asked, smiling like it was a coincidence. It wasn't. The executive elevators and service elevators were on opposite sides of the lobby. There was no reason for him to be using this one at this hour. Nadine's finger was still on the "door close" button. Her thumb pressed harder, uselessly. The doors were already shutting. 42 floors. No cameras. She knew because she'd checked. He stood closer than necessary in the empty elevator. Not touching her, but close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive that tried too hard. "We keep running into each other," he said. The elevator climbed. Floor 12. 13. The numbers blinked too slowly. "Did Patricia talk to you?" Nadine asked, eyes fixed on the floor indicator. His smile didn't change. "About what?" She didn't answer. The message was clear, HR had done nothing. "You know," he said, shifting slightly closer, you're different from the other cleaning staff. More alert. Educated, almost. Floor 27. 28. Most people in your position, they're just grateful for the paycheck. They don't ask questions. They don't notice things. Floor 33. 34. But you notice everything, don't you, Nadine? She didn't respond. Her right hand gripped the cleaning cart handle. Her left hand was in her pocket, wrapped around her pepper spray. Floor 40. 41. 42. The doors opened. She pushed her cart forward immediately. Have a good day, he said as she exited. She didn't turn around. 8. Done. There's a special kind of fear that comes from being trapped in a metal box with someone who thinks no is a suggestion. It's not the immediate panic of danger. It's the slow-motion horror of knowing that for 42 floors, for 94 seconds, no one would hear you scream. Incident number 11 was different. It happened on a Thursday, 1:47 p.m., service corridor on 45. The narrow hallway that connected the maintenance closet to the bathrooms. No security cameras. No foot traffic. Nadine had just finished restocking supplies. Her cart was full, her shift almost over. 30 more minutes and she could go home. She turned the corner and there he was. Just standing there, like he'd been waiting. Nadine, he said. Just the person I was looking for. The corridor was 8 feet wide. Her cart took up 3. He was standing in the middle, leaving barely enough space to pass. Excuse me, she said, trying to will past. I need to finish my rounds. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Not gentle. Not an accident. You're always rushing off, he said. The fake smile was gone. We never get to finish our conversations. She tried to pull her arm away. His grip tightened. Let go, she said. Not loud. Not yet. But firm. I just want to talk, he said. His thumb pressed into the soft underside of her wrist, where the pulse points were. About your chat with HR. About how disappointed I am that you misunderstood my friendly gestures. She yanked her arm back with enough force to break his grip. He wasn't expecting resistance. I need to finish my shift, she said, pushing her cart forward, forcing him to step aside or be hit. He moved, but barely. She had to turn her body to squeeze past. His hand reached out again, brushed her hip. This conversation isn't over, Nadine. She kept walking. Did not run. Did not look back. 11. Done. By evening, the bruise on her wrist had formed, 5 distinct fingerprints, dark against her brown skin. She photographed it in the harsh bathroom light of her apartment, the time stamp clear on her phone, 7:42 p.m., Thursday. Evidence. Data. Another entry in the growing log. Mrs. Park's office was exactly what you'd expect from 20 years in corporate HR, degrees on walls. Family photo, husband, 2 teenagers, positioned for visitors to see. Desk organized with the precision of someone who handled other people's chaos for a living. Nadine sat in the visitor's chair, back straight, hands folded in her lap. She wore a long-sleeved shirt despite the warm May weather. The bruise had faded to a sickly yellow-green, but it was still visible. Better to hide it than explain it. Thank you for meeting with me, Nadine said. Mrs. Park nodded, professional concern on her face. Of course. What can I help you with? I need to file a formal complaint against David Morrison. Mrs. Park's expression didn't change, but her pen paused above her notepad. Just for a second. Then she was writing again. What's the nature of your complaint? Harassment. Unwanted physical contact. Intimidation. More writing. Mrs. Park's face remained neutral, practiced. Can you be specific about these incidents? Nadine was prepared. She recited dates, times, locations. The elevator encounters. The comments about her appearance. The wrist grab in the service corridor. Did anyone witness these interactions? Mrs. Park asked. No, Nadine admitted. He's careful about that. More writing. The sound of the pen against paper filled the silence. And you're sure you haven't misinterpreted his intentions? Sometimes friendly gestures can be. He grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave bruises, Nadine interrupted. That's not a friendly gesture. Mrs. Park looked up. Do you have documentation of these bruises? Yes. Nadine took out her phone, pulled up the photo. Showed it to Mrs. Park. Mrs. Park studied it. This could have happened any number of ways. It happened exactly the way I described. Unfortunately, without witnesses. You're saying you don't believe me. I'm saying, Mrs. Park replied carefully, closing her notebook, that David Morrison has been with Hanjin for 8 years. He has an exemplary record. His uncle sits on our board of directors. There it was. The real reason nothing would happen. So because he's connected, he can do whatever he wants? Nadine asked. I didn't say that. Mrs. Park's voice remained even. I'll speak to David about appropriate workplace conduct. But I'd recommend being careful about finding yourself alone with him. Being careful. Like it was her job to avoid harassment, not his job to stop harassing. Nadine stood up. Thank you for your time. I'll make a note of your concerns in his file, Mrs. Park said, as if that meant anything. In the hallway outside HR, Nadine's hands were shaking. Not with fear. With rage. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed. Just not for people like her. HR departments exist to protect companies, not employees. This isn't cynicism, it's documented reality. Studies show that over 75% of employees who report harassment face some form of retaliation, while fewer than 15% of harassers face meaningful consequences. For someone like Nadine, a black woman in a low-status position, reporting a white man with connections, those odds dropped even further. But knowing the statistics didn't make the reality any less infuriating. David knew about the complaint within 48 hours. Nadine could tell by the way he looked at her in the hallway on Tuesday morning. The fake friendliness was gone. So was the predatory smile. His eyes were cold, calculating, measuring her in a new way. He didn't speak to her that day. Or the next. The comments stopped. The accidental encounters stopped. Instead, she would turn a corner and find him watching her from across a room. She would exit a bathroom and see him down the hallway, phone to his ear, eyes following her movement. Sometimes silence is louder than words. And David Morrison's silence screamed of something dangerous building behind it. The first time Nadine saw Lee Min-woo, she almost didn't recognize him. It was 6:45 a.m. on a Wednesday, her 8th time cleaning his office. The space was supposed to be empty, as it always was at this hour. Except this time, something was different. The desk lamp was on. A coffee mug, white porcelain, still steaming, sat beside the keyboard. Someone had been here. Recently. Nadine hesitated in the doorway. Son, he's warning echoed in her mind. If he's there, you turn around. You come back later. You never disturb. But the office appeared empty. Bathroom door open. No coat on the rack. No briefcase beside the desk. She should leave. Come back later. That was protocol. Instead, she stepped inside and began her routine. Quickly. Efficiently. Vacuum the floor, dust the surfaces, empty the small trash can, wipe down the glass tabletop. As she worked, her eyes kept returning to the photograph on his desk. The one in the silver frame. The traditional Korean family portrait. Grandparents in handbox. 2 young boys standing in front. Today, for the first time, she broke her own rule. She looked more closely. The older couple stood rigid, formal. The woman's face betrayed nothing. The man's expression was stern, commanding. The older boy, maybe 12, had the same stern expression as the man. Shoulders back. Chin up. A miniature adult. But the younger boy, perhaps 7 or 8, was smiling. Not a full grin, that wouldn't be allowed in a formal portrait, but the corners of his mouth turned up slightly. His eyes held something like mischief. She wondered which one became the man everyone feared. That's my grandfather. The voice came from the doorway. Nadine spun around, her heart stopping for a full second before slamming against her ribs. Lee Min-woo stood in the entrance to his office, watching her. He was taller than she'd expected. At least 6'3". Broad-shouldered in a charcoal suit without a tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. His black hair was styled simply, expensive in its restraint. But what struck her most were his hands. Strong hands. Tattooed at the wrists, intricate patterns disappearing beneath his shirt cuffs. And his eyes. Dark, steady, completely unreadable. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't realize you were. She stopped. Mrs. Park's rules echoed. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't ask questions. You didn't answer my question. His voice was calm, neutral, neither threatening nor friendly. Nadine's mind raced. He hadn't asked a question. He'd made a statement about his grandfather. You asked about the photograph, she said carefully. But you didn't ask a question. Sir. Something shifted in his expression. Not a smile, but close. A flicker of interest. You're observant. I try to be, sir. How long have you worked here? 4 months and 12 days. Which floors? 40 through 52. Executive level. He moved into the office, and Nadine stepped back automatically, giving him space. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city. Do you like the work? The question surprised her. People like Lee Min-woo didn't ask cleaning staff if they liked their work. They barely acknowledged cleaning staff existed. It pays well, she said honestly. The benefits are good. That's not what I asked. Nadine hesitated. The truth was that she didn't like the work. She liked being able to eat. She liked being able to pay rent. She liked not drowning, for the first time in 2 years. I like being able to survive, she said finally. The work is the price. Lee Min-woo turned to look at her. Really look, the way most people never did. Like he was seeing past the uniform, past the cleaning cart, past the invisible barrier between someone who owned a building and someone who cleaned it. What did you do before this? I have a master's degree in economics. From Howard University. The words came out before she could stop them. Nobody's hiring economists without experience. So you clean offices instead. I do what's necessary. Sir. Another almost smile. You don't have to keep calling me sir. Mrs. Parks rules. I'd prefer to keep my job. Ah. He nodded slowly. Mrs. Park is thorough. He didn't say anything else. After a moment, Nadine realized she'd been standing there frozen, completely forgetting about her actual job. I should finish cleaning, she said. If you need me to come back later. No. Finish your work. I'll be in a meeting for the next hour. He walked past her toward the door, then stopped. What's your name? Nadine. Nadine Usher. Nadine. He repeated it like he was filing it away. I'll remember that. Then he was gone. Nadine stood in the empty office, heart pounding, trying to understand what had just happened. The most dangerous man in Manhattan had asked her name. Had looked at her like she mattered. And she had absolutely no idea what that meant. There's a concept in psychology called breaking pattern. When something unexpected happens, it forces us to pay attention. To actually see what's in front of us. For 4 months, Nadine had been invisible. She'd worked hard at being invisible. It was her survival strategy. Lee Min-woo had just shattered that invisibility in 5 minutes. And that scared her more than David Morrison ever had. Because David was a known threat. Predictable. Manageable. Min-woo was something else entirely. The rumor spread through Hanjin Tower like electricity through water. Nadine didn't know how. She hadn't told anyone. Not even Sun Hee. But somehow, by the next day, David Morrison knew that she'd spoken to Lee Min-woo. That the CEO knew her name. That he'd asked about her background. Heard you had a chat with the big boss, David said. It was 1:15 p.m., hallway outside the copy room on 43. He'd been waiting for her. Moving up in the world? She kept her face neutral, her body language disinterested. Just doing my job. Just doing your job, he repeated, stepping closer. The hallway was empty. Like you were just doing your job when you went to HR? She didn't answer. Her hand was already in her pocket, wrapped around her pepper spray. Funny thing about this company, David said, his voice dropping. People who get too close to the top tend to fall. Hard. The threat wasn't subtle. Excuse me, she said, trying to move past him with her cart. He stepped aside, but his hand caught her arm as she passed. Not as hard as before. Just a warning squeeze. Be careful who you talk to, Nadine. She pulled away and kept walking. That night, she stared at her bank account on her cracked phone screen. $73.41. Not enough to quit. Not nearly enough. She'd been careful. Putting aside small amounts from each paycheck. Eating ramen 4 nights a week. No streaming services. No new clothes. No life outside work and sleep. But $73.41 wouldn't cover rent. Wouldn't cover food. Wouldn't cover the minimum payment on her student loans that was already 2 months late. Nadine closed the banking app and opened her documentation notebook instead. Added the new incident. Date. Time. Location. Exact words. The warning squeeze that wasn't quite a grab. When she was done, She flipped through the pages. 15 incidents now. 15 data points building a pattern that nobody with power seemed to care about. Except maybe one person. The most dangerous one of all. The next 2 weeks would be the longest of Nadine's life. Not because of what happened, but because of what was about to happen. Because David Morrison had spent 8 years learning how to hurt people without leaving evidence. And he'd just decided that Nadine Usher had become a problem that needed solving. Permanently. Wednesday night. 9:17 p.m. Nadine hadn't planned to work late. The quarterly reports were due Thursday morning, and the executives had been in meetings all day, leaving trails of coffee cups and discarded paper that needed clearing before the morning shift. The Hangen Tower emptied in layers. Regular employees at 5. Middle management by 6. Senior staff by 7. By 9 p.m., only the workaholics, cleaning crew, and security remained. She checked her phone. Last subway that would get her home at a decent hour left in 20 minutes. Enough time if she hurried. The service elevator opened on the parking level. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering at the far end where the bulbs needed replacing. Her footsteps echoed against concrete. One security guard should have been stationed by the entrance. His booth was empty. Nadine's hand tightened around her pepper spray as she walked toward her section. Row G, spot 23. Her 10-year-old Honda with the dent in the passenger door and the tape holding the left mirror together. Her instincts screamed before her conscious mind registered why. The garage was too quiet. No distant car engines. No elevator hum. No radio from the security booth. Just footsteps behind her that weren't there a moment ago. Working late? David Morrison stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Not smiling. Not pretending this was accidental. Nadine's heart hammered against her ribs. She kept walking, eyes focused on her car 30 yards away. "I'm heading home," she said. Voice steady. Hand gripping the pepper spray in her pocket. "Patricia told me what you said," David continued, matching her pace. "That I assaulted you. That I left bruises." She didn't answer. 25 yards to the car. "That's a serious accusation, Nadine." "Because it's true." "No," he said, moving faster, cutting off her path. "What's true is that you've been leading me on for months. Smiling at me in meetings. And now you're trying to ruin my career because I finally made a move. I never smiled at you. I never led you on." 15 yards to the car. Keys already in hand. "You're delusional." His expression twisted with rage. "I'm delusional." He lunged at her. Nadine had taken 2 self-defense classes at the community center in Washington Heights. Enough to know the basics. She tried to use the pepper spray, but he was faster, knocking it from her hand, sending it skittering across the concrete floor. Her knee came up toward his groin. He twisted, taking the blow on his thigh instead. His hand tangled in her hair, slamming her against the concrete pillar. The impact drove the air from her lungs. "You think you're so smart," he snarled, his fist connecting with her ribs. "So much better than everyone." Another punch. Something cracked inside her. The pain was immediate, blinding. "But you're nothing," he hissed. "Just another." She clawed at his face, felt her nails connect, draw blood. He cursed, slammed her head back against the concrete. The world spun. She tried to scream, but his hand clamped over her mouth. "You tell anyone about this," he said, his voice suddenly quiet, controlled, "and I'll finish the job." Then he was gone, footsteps echoing in the empty garage. Nadine slid down the pillar to the floor, arms wrapped around her torso, trying to breathe through pain that felt like fire inside her chest. The garage lights flickered overhead. 1 blink. 2. Then darkness swallowed everything. She didn't pass out. Not completely. Just moments of gray static interrupting consciousness. Static, then the concrete cold against her cheek. Static, then dragging herself toward her car. Static, then fumbling with keys, hands shaking. 9:48 p.m. She was behind the wheel, moving through pain that made the world blur at the edges. She couldn't go to Manhattan Memorial. That was where Hanjin executives went. Someone would recognize her. She couldn't afford an ambulance. Couldn't afford emergency room charges. Meadowview Urgent Care in Queens. That was the answer. 40 minutes away. Open until midnight. No connection to Hanjin. Each breath was a knife between her ribs. Each pothole in the road sent fresh pain exploding through her body. She drove with one hand pressed against her side, as if holding herself together. 10:32 p.m. The urgent care waiting room was half empty. A mother with a feverish toddler. An elderly man with a persistent cough. A teenage boy with what looked like a broken finger. Name? The receptionist asked. Nadine Usher. Insurance? Hanjin Corporation. She handed over her card. Reason for visit? I fell. The lie tasted bitter. Down some stairs. 43 minutes later, she was in an exam room with Dr. Patel, a woman in her 50s with gentle hands and eyes that had seen too many falls to believe them. 2 broken ribs, she said, studying the X-rays. Severe bruising across your torso. Possible mild concussion from the impact to your head. This wasn't from stairs. Nadine said nothing. These injuries are consistent with an assault, Dr. Patel continued. I can have a social worker come speak with you. We can file a police report. I can't. Why not? Because it won't matter. He's connected. I'm nobody. Nadine's voice cracked. The system doesn't work for people like me. Dr. Patel's expression held such profound sadness. Then at least let me document this properly, she said. In case you change your mind. Nadine nodded, too exhausted to argue. The examination was thorough. Every bruise photographed. Every injury documented. Forms signed. Reports filed. These are your discharge instructions, Dr. Patel said, handing her papers and a prescription. Strong painkillers for the next week. Rest. No lifting. No strenuous activity. You should take at least 2 weeks off work. 2 weeks. Without pay. Impossible. I'll be careful, Nadine said. Dr. Patel knew it was a lie. They both did. The ribs will take 6 to 8 weeks to fully heal, she said. If you develop difficulty breathing, severe pain, or dizziness, go to an emergency room immediately. Nadine took the papers. Took the prescription. Paid her copay from her dwindling bank account. $73.41 minus $30. $43.41 remaining. 12:46 a.m. She drove to a 24-hour pharmacy. Filled the prescription. Another $15 copay. $28.41 remaining. 1:37 a.m. Home. The stairs to her third-floor apartment nearly broke her. Each step sent fresh waves of agony through her body. Inside, she locked the door. Double-checked it. Triple-checked. She took 2 painkillers. Then, sitting at her kitchen table, she made a decision that would define the next 3 days. She would go back to work. She would finish the quarterly report due Friday. She would not let David Morrison win, even if it killed her. 5:30 a.m. Thursday. Day 1. Nadine stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. The bruises had darkened overnight. Purple and black spread across her torso like spilled ink. Her face had been spared, except for a small cut at her temple that could be covered with makeup. Getting dressed was an exercise in agony. First, bandages wrapped tightly around her ribs, providing compression that made breathing fractionally less painful. Next, the loosest bra she owned, still too tight against the bruising. Then, a tank top. A long-sleeved shirt buttoned to the collar. An oversized blazer she'd bought at Goodwill for interviews before giving up on professional jobs. She looked normal. Professional, even. As long as nobody saw what was underneath. The painkillers dulled the edges but couldn't touch the core of her agony. Each breath was still fire. Each movement still sent lightning through her nervous system. But she could function. Could walk. Could speak. She crushed another painkiller between her teeth before leaving the apartment. Survival wasn't pretty. But she was very, very good at it. 6 a.m. Hanjin Tower lobby. Security nodded to her as she badged in. They didn't notice her slightly stiff gait. Didn't see how she kept her left arm pressed against her side, stabilizing her ribs. The service elevator was empty, thank God. She leaned against the wall once the doors closed, allowing herself 10 seconds of relief when no one could see her face contort with pain. She started on the 40th floor, working slower than usual. Every movement calculated to minimize stress on her broken ribs. By 8:30, she'd managed 3 floors instead of her usual 5. Had to skip 2 restrooms. Had taken 4 more painkillers, double the recommended dose. At 9:17, David Morrison stepped out of the elevator on 43. Nadine was vacuuming the hallway. She didn't look up, but her body went rigid, sending fresh waves of pain through her torso. He walked past her like she didn't exist. No acknowledgement. No comment. But as he passed, he said one word. Quiet enough that only she could hear. Remember. That single word carried the weight of his threat from the garage. Tell anyone, and I'll finish the job. She kept vacuuming, kept breathing through the pain, kept surviving. By noon, she could barely stand. The painkillers were wearing off faster. The compression bandage felt like it was suffocating her. She locked herself in a bathroom stall on 48, pressed her forehead against the cool metal partition, and allowed herself exactly 60 seconds of silent tears. Then she straightened. Reapplied her makeup. Took 2 more painkillers. And went back to work. That night, in her apartment, Nadine carefully documented everything. New page in her notebook: assault, parking garage. Date. Time. Exact location. What was said. The injuries. She added the doctor's report. The photographs from urgent care. The prescription information. Then she wrote out the calculation that had forced her back to work. Rent due, $1,450. Current bank balance, $28.41. Payday, 9 days away. Time off without pay, not an option. The math was simple. Brutal but simple. And that's when the email arrived from Patricia in HR. All cleaning staff required for quarterly meeting preparation. Friday 2 p.m., Executive Conference Room, 52nd floor. Attendance mandatory. Friday. 2 p.m. Less than 24 hours away. She could do this. One more day. She just had to survive one more day. 4:30 a.m. The alarm's chirp sounded like a scream to Nadine's exhausted mind. Her eyes opened to darkness, to pain, to the weight of another day pressing down on her broken body. Getting out of bed took planning now. Step 1, roll to her right side, keeping torso rigid. Step 2, use her right arm to push up while swinging legs to the floor. Step 3, pause for the wave of nausea to pass. The pain had evolved overnight. Less sharp, more pervasive. A dull throbbing that spiked whenever she inhaled too deeply. Bathroom. Medicine cabinet. 6 ibuprofen remained in the bottle. She took 3, crushing them between her teeth, swallowing the bitter powder dry. Shower was impossible. She couldn't raise her arms high enough to wash her hair. She settled for a careful wipe down with a damp cloth, avoiding the darkest bruises. The mirror showed the progression. Purple had deepened to black across her rib cage. Yellow edges were forming around the older bruises. The cut at her temple had scabbed over but looked angry, red against her brown skin. More makeup today. Foundation. Concealer. Careful blending. You can do this, she told her reflection. 4 hours. Stand for 4 hours. Then you can go home. The largest blazer she owned. Black, boxy, concealing. Loose slacks with an elastic waist that didn't press against her torso. She checked her phone. 94% charged. Keys with pepper spray, useless as it had proven. Wallet with $23 cash and a debit card that guarded her last $28.41. Enough for today. Not enough for a life. The Saturday morning subway crawled between stations. Weekend schedule. Fewer trains. More waiting. Nadine stood, gripping the pole. Sitting hurt more. The rigid plastic seats forced her spine straight, pressed against her damaged ribs. Standing let her lean, let her shift her weight when the pain flared. Outside the windows, the city was waking reluctantly. Bodega owners rolling up metal shutters. Early joggers in Central Park. Weekend workers trudging toward jobs that didn't respect Saturdays. A young woman across from her was reading something on her phone, smiling. A couple leaned against each other, dozing. A child pointed at Nadine's formal clothes, curious about who dressed up on weekends. Normal people. Normal lives. Nadine envied their ignorance of how quickly normal could shatter. 4 hours. Stand for 4 hours. Then she could go home. Hanjin Tower felt different on Saturdays. The emptiness made it honest somehow. No pretense of being just another corporation when the hallways echoed and security watched more carefully. The lobby guard checked her ID twice, scrutinizing her face against the photo. Quarterly meeting, he asked. Yes, she answered. Cleaning staff. He nodded, eyes already moving to the next person. As she crossed the lobby, a black BMW pulled into the executive parking space visible through the glass doors. David Morrison stepped out, straightening his tie. Their eyes met through the glass. He didn't smile. Didn't nod. Just stared, his expression somewhere between satisfaction and warning. She looked away first, moving toward the elevator bank. Her hand was steady as she pressed the button. Her breathing was controlled despite the fire in her chest. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. By 1:45 p.m., Nadine had positioned herself strategically in the executive conference room on the 52nd floor. Back wall. Near the door. A smooth marble column she could lean against without looking like she needed support. The other cleaning staff milled around, straightening chairs, refilling water pitchers. Normal pre-meeting tasks. None of them noticed how Nadine minimized her movements, how she used her right hand for everything, how she breathed in small, careful sips of air. She took 4 more ibuprofen, washing them down with water stolen from an executive's glass. Double the recommended dose. Still not enough. The digital clock on the wall read 1:55 p.m. 5 minutes until the meeting. 5 minutes until she could become invisible again. 5 minutes until the hardest performance of her life began. The conference room filled in order of importance. First, the assistants, laptops open, seating cards arranged. Then department heads, moving with the confidence of the middle tier. Next, senior executives, who didn't rush, didn't worry, didn't apologize for anything. Finally, the board members, men who'd been making decisions since before Nadine was born. David Morrison sat 3/4 down the massive oval table, in the logistics section. He didn't look at her. Didn't need to. His victory was already complete in his mind. At exactly 2 p.m., the room shifted. Subtle but unmistakable. Conversations quieted. Postures straightened. Faces composed into attentive masks. Lee Min-woo entered. He didn't hurry. Didn't announce himself. Simply appeared in the doorway, and the room reorganized itself around him like iron filings aligning to a magnet. Nadine had seen him only once before, in his office, but that hadn't prepared her for Min-woo in his full authority. He wore a black suit that fit him perfectly. No tie. White shirt open at the collar, revealing hints of the tattoos that marked him as something other than just another CEO. He moved to the head of the table, standing rather than sitting. His eyes scanned the room methodically, assessing, categorizing, measuring. When his gaze passed over Nadine, it didn't pause. Didn't recognize. She was invisible again, exactly as she wanted. Quarterly review, he said, his voice quieter than expected. People leaned forward to hear, which was exactly the point. He made them work to listen. Department heads, you have 5 minutes each. Numbers only. I don't want explanations unless I ask for them. The meeting began. Finance first. Charts projected on the wall. Growth in some sectors, concerns in others. Nadine focused on breathing. Small, shallow breaths that kept the pain at a consistent throb rather than sharp spikes. 2:15 p.m. Her left leg began to tremble. She shifted her weight, pressing harder against the column behind her. Operations next. Supply chain issues in the Asian corridors. Shipping delays that cost money. 2:30 p.m. The room's edges began to blur. The voices became muffled, as if she were hearing them through water. She blinked hard, tried to focus. Legal department. Something about regulatory compliance. Words that stopped making sense. 2:38 p.m. She shifted her weight again, and pain lanced through her side. Sharp enough that she had to bite her lip to keep from gasping. Human resources. Patricia's voice, discussing retention rates, completely avoiding mention of harassment complaints. 2:42 p.m. "Excuse me," said a voice. Male. One of the executives.